I love the Red Sox like I love the Beatles. Are there Beatles songs that I dislike? Yes, there are. Looking at You, What Goes On, sung by Ringo Starr. Are there Red Sox players that I've disliked in my lifetime? Yeah, Looking at You, Darren Bragg and Darren Lewis.
Welcome to this
Do you want to hear the song I wrote last night?
episode of the Maz's Musings podcast. A little Beatles clip for you, giving you a little taste of what this episode's going to be about. Yeah, we're talking about some music, which is something that I'm not particularly familiar with, or at least not really an expert on. So I'm bringing in an expert. And this is part of the kind of series, I guess you can call it a series, where we're taking past guests and bring them back on the podcast and having them talk about something different, something else that they are passionate about. Now, Greg Cameron is joining me, and he's someone who has been on the podcast several times to talk about sports. And another passion of his is music. So we are going to kind of, instead of completely pivoting away from sports, we're going to incorporate music and sports into this one episode. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But of course, something that is music to all of our ears is Meghan's Cuckoo Bananas Joke of the Week.
And now it's time for Meghan's
Cuckoo Bananas Joke.
Meghan, hit the record button today. I wasn't ready for that. All right, that must mean that you've got a joke. Yes?
Yes!
All right, let's hear
What
it.
do you call a lost wolf?
I don't know. What do you call a lost wolf?
A werewolf. Ow! Ow!
Okay. Okay, werewolf, time to say goodnight.
Good night.
All right, now that we've had a laugh, let's have a little bit more fun and dive into what's happening in Disney this week with Mazza's Mickey Minute.
Donald, wake up! It's showtime! Don't forget the orchestra!
Ah, there you are. And just in time.
Mom says there's even more magical stuff now.
For those of you standing, please hold on to the handrails throughout our journey and stay clear of the doors.
Hang on to them hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
And here we go!
All right, so you may or may not be aware that Big Thunder Mountain, which is one of my favorite attractions at Walt Disney World at the Magic Kingdom, it's been closed for a while. They've been doing some major work on it, some renovations. They've completely switched out the track, a really big project. This was more than just a freshening up. Well, it's going to reopen on May 3rd. Which also happens to be my wife's birthday. We will not be there at the Magic Kingdom to celebrate, unfortunately. But anyway, it closed in January of last year. So extensive refurbishment. New track, new ride vehicles. Now, in the past, here's an interesting piece of information. We knew about a lot of this other stuff, so this is a little bit new, and this is why I'm bringing it up today. In the past, you used to have to be 40 inches or taller to ride that ride. Now, it's being reported in several places that that height requirement has been lowered to 38 inches. Now, why this is, I'm not exactly sure. From what I've been told, it has nothing to do with the restraining bar. My initial theory was they were replacing the single bar that they used to use. So you'd pull it down, and if I was sitting next to someone smaller than me, even Eileen, the bar would go down to my thighs, which would mean that whoever's next to me isn't held down as tightly as I am. And so if Meghan and Eileen were in the same car, well, Eileen is going to be a lot snugger in there than Meghan was going to be. So I thought maybe they did away with that and they went to individual lap bars. Apparently that is not the case. So I'm interested as to why this change has been made. What's different about the ride this time that smaller children are safe to ride in it? I'm sure that there's something about the new ride vehicles that makes it so, but I'm really curious as to what went into that decision. If you have any information and I would love to hear it. If you'd like to let me know, you can reach out to me, email mazasmusings@gmail.com, or on the socials, which I'll let you know all about at the end of the episode. And if you happen to be at the Magic Kingdom on May 3rd or sometime around then, and you get a chance to see this and have an idea as to why this has changed, I would love to know. Well, that's just one of the little mysteries and head-scratching things about Disney and Walt Disney World. And if you are looking to take the head-scratching and the guesswork out of your next vacation, you should contact We Do Travel Right. Now, We Do Travel Right has that one-on-one service of an agent, and that agent has a team behind them who is helping you get those hard-to-get dining reservations. They're helping you with your hotels, with your park tickets, with helping you navigate the ins and outs of the trip, and also helping you navigate your budget to make sure that it's the right trip for you and your family. And the best thing about We Do Travel Right is their services are free. That's right. You do not pay We Do Travel Right anything extra to use their services. That's because Disney or Universal or all-inclusives or cruise lines, they all build the use of an agent into their pricing. So you're paying for the agent already. So doesn't it just make sense to use something that you're already paying for? So if you are interested in getting your next magical vacation started today, head to wedotravelright.com/Mazza. That's wedotravelright.com/MAZA.
Now I can't do any more damage around this popsicle stand.
So long, partner.
See you real soon.
All right. And Greg Cameron is joining me once again. And, well, Greg has kind of been the resident go-to sports guy that I talk to about all things, primarily Boston and New England sports, though we do dive into some other topics. And, well, one thing that I've been doing with a lot of my guests lately is I've been trying to find a way to incorporate some of their other passions into their guest appearances on the podcast. I just recently had some of my friends who are from various Disney podcasts who are also baseball fans to come on and just talk about what they love about baseball and what we love about baseball. So doing things like that. And one thing that Greg is also super passionate about is music. And I had originally had a plan for a totally different episode with Greg talking about music. He does a top 15 list of songs of the past year. But then the Patriots had to go and ruin that by making the Super Bowl. It was just like, well, we've got to kind of pivot to that, don't we? So, we're getting back into a very busy time for Boston and New England sports. So we wanted to talk about that, but I also wanted to still incorporate music into this episode. So I think that we found a pretty unique way to do that. And we'll get into that in a minute. But before I get rolling too far into this podcast, I wanted to take an opportunity to let Greg say hello, introduce himself, or reintroduce himself. And yeah, Greg, so have at it.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be back on the Maz's Musing podcast. You may have heard, part of this intro sort of does feel very Simpsons, very, hello, I'm Troy McClure. You might remember me from such transportation videos as the monorail. And so, like, you know, it sort of has a little bit of that, like, kind of like, you know me from such things, from such Maz's Musings podcasts as, oh my God, they talked about the NFL draft that long? We will do a little bit of draft talk. I should warn you people, I did 2 mock drafts today, and the first one was so weird that I was like, no, I have to get this one. And then did another one that was like, okay, this is much less of a screw it. We're gonna take these weird guys and just like build a weird team through the draft. But it felt very Elliot Wolf for me to do that first one. It felt very very upside potential. But the second one's a little bit more normal. But anyway, sort of I guess what other people can kind of know about me. I currently work at MIT. I'm in the athletic department. I'm the marketing manager for the recreation department. So that's right. I play for work pretty much. I play and ride the Peloton for work pretty much. And so that's really great. But you may have read some stuff that I've written in a wide variety of places, from the Republican out in Springfield to the Westfield Evening News way back in the day. Way back when it still had the Pulse line, which people would call in and complain about the city of Westfield and their neighbors. And those are the days where I'm pretty sure people did read my Little League recaps. So those were always fun days to find your byline, you know, a couple pages away from somebody complaining about potholes. And then I've written for some other places, WEI.com. I did a pretty hard pivot in about 2014 that lasted a handful of years to covering a lot of music stuff. After a while, you cover the same Pioneer Valley football games on Friday nights. They all sort of tend to blend together. So I did kind of a hard pivot to one of my other passions, as Chris mentioned. Music, I had covered a lot of concerts and album reviews and did a bunch of different stuff for Alternative Press magazine, which was really cool. That was a magazine I had read when I was a teenager, and to then kind of do some album review stuff for them was really cool, and do some things on their online site, and do some stuff here in Boston after I had moved in 2015, after moving from Westfield to do some stuff for Vanyaland, which is still a site that's still around. And then kind of nowadays when I'm writing stuff, I kind of write for myself pretty much, and do like the top 15 songs piece that I do every year. Every now and again I do, and by now and again I mean something has to sort of strike me a little bit to write about it now, because I'm not doing it for work. But if it's stuff that I do like to do, sometimes I will write more than just the one annual piece. But it's been a few years since I've done that. But so like that's kind of what I do outside in terms of like writing and creating content outside of work. But yeah, like as Chris had mentioned, one of my kind of big passions is music. Later on this month, my wife and I are traveling to the UK, and one of the places we're going to in the UK is Manchester. And if you're a kind of an alternative rock person, Manchester is a pretty important city in terms of kind of the landscape of the United Kingdom in kind of pop and rock music history. It's the hometown of Joy Division and New Order, pretty much the same band, kind of separated by tragedy. But the Smiths, a little band called Oasis, came from there as well, and even all the way up to now with the 1975, and so that's one of the things I really love to do. A few years ago, pre-COVID, before the world kind of shut off in 2020, my wife and I also went to Liverpool, England, which for some of you may think that their biggest import is like ships, and that's sort of where the Titanic was registered in Liverpool, and these big cruise liners like that. But for other folks, their biggest cultural export is a little band called the Beatles. Not sure if you've heard of them. They're kind of a funky little indie band, and not at all a world eater since 1964. But was able to kind of do a tour of Liverpool kind of through the lens of the Beatles, and sort of really get to kind of feed into that passion as well. So so that's kind of the music sense of things. I don't ever really talk about it much, other than to like the 4 people who read my Substack when I write that piece every late December. But it'll be good to kind of talk a little music here with you.
Well, who knows? After this podcast, maybe you'll have 5 Substack listeners or readers.
It's a good round number. We love it. We love it over at the Box Scores and B-Sides Substack.
All right. And I will put a link to that Substack in the show notes. So if anybody is interested, they'd be able to go and check it out. So for today's exercise, the first part of this episode, we are melding these 2 great passions of Greg's. Now, I will readily admit that I don't have the same level of passion or knowledge in music that he does, so I'm going to defer to him probably a lot in terms of this part of the conversation, but I think that it's going to be a fun exercise anyway. And basically what we're going to be doing is looking at the 4 major sports franchises in New England, and also, Greg, if there are any others you'd like to throw in there, you're more than welcome. But we're taking those 4 and we're thinking about how they make us feel right now. And I thought it'd be fun to kind of try to figure out what song or songs really convey those feelings about whatever franchise we're talking about. So, we had talked about this a little while ago. Greg said, "Oh yeah, this is my jam," and then
pun intended.
We kind of forgot about it, and then I kind of put him on the spot and said it on Monday and said, "Hey, you want to do this?" So I appreciate you being flexible and pivoting with me.
Of course, absolutely. The it's such a really cool concept and really fun concept to sort of think about kind of Boston sports, and then sort of like kind of bifurcate that with the idea of like a song that sort of represents each one. I do have a list of 4 songs, but we can sort of kind of use those as sort of launching points for, I guess, sort of talking about the 4 teams. I will admit my Celtics one, because they're just so good that I had to sort of think of like, well, I can't put like Stairway to Heaven because it's so good as like representative of the Celtics. Like that's just boring. Like that's just boring to kind of hear, like to hear a guy, certainly, who looks like me and talks like me, talk about like compare the Boston Celtics to Led Zeppelin. That's just boring. But I kind of had to get into like my like 2000s to 2010s hip hop bag to kind of talk about them and sort of go into the world of like, well, the sample in this song is this, and it sort of reminds me of sort of what's going on now with this team. So I went down some weird holes.
All right, well that's cool. No, before we start examining this list, It's funny. We're having a conversation at work today about the level of emotional impact and emotional investment sports people can have with sports. And I think the same can be said for people and music in the same way. So we I do think that makes this in some ways a little bit of, now I know you mentioned that you could have taken the easy way, but you decided to, veer off from that a little bit. But I think that this, because of the emotional connection that people can have with both, it's actually a pretty easy and accessible exercise for people to kind of go through themselves as well. So if anybody wants to play along with this and send their ideas, feel free. We're not live today. We've been live before, but if you send those to me via email, mazzesmusings@gmail.com, or find us on social media. I'd love to read some of those in another episode. So, all right. So let's get started. I'm not sure how you've kind of done your list up, so I'm going to give you kind of the lead on this part. I did my best with some of this, based both on my limited knowledge of music, and also there are certain teams, namely the Celtics, that I don't have as much of a vested interest in because of my level of interest in the sport. So, so I'm going to let you lead, and I'm going to kind of jump in and interrupt you, at opportune moments.
Okay. Because this is your house, and I am a guest in your podcast house. Do you want me to start with what I think is the funniest?
Yes, let's go with funniest. Let's start off.
Okay, great. Perfect. So the funniest for me is the song that I chose for the Boston Red Sox. And I love the Boston Red Sox, and I love them a lot. I would say of the four sports teams, I probably love them the most. But when it comes to things that you love the most, I think you also have a higher quotient of being annoyed and frustrated with them when they are frustrating. And so as I'd kind of weirdly alluded to before, talking about the Liverpool trip or the trip that included Liverpool that I'd gone on in 2019, I feel like for me, kind of my like sports and music loves are kind of intertwined with both the Red Sox and the Beatles. My auntie Sue, who's a Beatles obsessive and a Red Sox obsessive, she's my mom's older sister, and my mom's one of two. So on that side of the family, she's the only auntie on that side of the family, and so I was bitten by both her Red Sox affectation and her Beatles affectation. So I wanted to choose a song by the Beatles with the Red Sox. That sort of was always my mindset. And one of the ones that I had chosen is a song off of the a lot of people who are vinyl heads like myself say that the best side of an album is Abbey Road's second side. And the second side of Abbey Road it's basically a bunch of unfinished songs all strewn together. And the first song on the second side of Abbey Road is a song called You Never Give Me Your Money. And I see you're already chuckling because you kind of see where I'm going to go with this. This is a song that I love. It is a weird song. It feels very much like a song about that Paul McCartney is just trying to like fly the plane while also building it. Because like parts of it are also built and baked into the very famous kind of trio at the end of the album of Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight, in the end, which, if you're a Beatles head, those are the final 3 songs the Beatles produce making records together. They do Let It Be is actually as good for your Disney folks too, who, if they watch the Beatles Get Back, which I wholeheartedly recommend if you're a Beatles head, it's the work that Peter Jackson had done to restore that footage and really frame it in a way of what was really happening compared to Michael Lindsay Hogg in 1970 with Let It Be. You know that in early 1969, when the rooftop concert happens, they still have stuff to write, and they're still writing stuff. There's some of these songs, you can hear them, these rough drafts that eventually become Abbey Road, which gets released in the summer of 1969. So but the thing about You Never Give Me Your Money, first off, the title just sounds like what I think the Red Sox roster would say to John Henry. You never give me your money, John. Or like, and I think kind of fans have that frustration now too. They did win the last 2 against Milwaukee last night and today.
One more, and it's a winning streak.
They had it. I will tell you, TC and Jim Ed Rice did have this discussion on the post game show I had heard, and it was excuse me, and TC had asked Jim Rice, "Do you consider a 2 in a row a winning streak?" And Jim Rice had kind of the best retort to it of, "Well, if you lose 2 in a row, do you consider that a losing streak?" "Well, yeah, I do." So it's like, the opposite's got to be true. Who am I to quibble with Hall of Famer Jim Rice?
That's true. I'm going more off of Lou Brown, who told his team, of course, in Major League. I believe it was Major League 2. He actually said that, but we three makes a winning streak. And in that
it great gravelly baritone too. And it has happened before. Just one of the great movie. Yeah, I don't want to veer off into sports movies.
Sorry,
one of my favorite sports movie characters of all time, because he just has this look that he does not care, but how he talks, he cares very much.
Mm-hmm.
He's like Roy Kent before Roy Kent was a thing. It's great. From Ted Lasso. I don't know if you've seen Ted Lasso. We've never talked about
I need to get an Apple subscription because I have not been able to see Ted Lasso. And I think that basically the universe is telling me that I need to, because clips of Ted Lasso have started showing up on my my TikTok feed. Of course, there's no context to any of it for me, so I don't know, but it's obviously something that it's been on my list, but not getting a subscription level been on my list.
It's pretty good. I will fully recommend it. But
let's refocus.
We're gonna focus. Getting back to You Never Give Me Your Money. The first lyrics are, "You never give me your money, you only give me your funny paper. And in the middle of negotiations, you break down." I mean, take your pick of which of which Red Sox players or potential Red Sox targets, broke down in negotiations.
Or people they had in the building.
Oh, totally. Totally. And it's just, yeah. So, but like the second verse is, "Out of college money spent, see no future, pay no rent. All the money's gone, nowhere to go. Any jobber got the sack Monday morning, turning back, yellow lorry slow, nowhere to go. But oh, that magic feeling, nowhere to go. Oh, that magic feeling, nowhere to go." And as a Red Sox fan, again, I love the Red Sox like I love the Beatles. Are there Beatles songs that I dislike? Yes, there are. "Looking at You, What Goes On," sung by Ringo Starr. Are there Red Sox players that I've disliked in my lifetime? Yeah, "Looking at You," Darren Bragg and Darren Lewis. You were basically the same guy to me when I was young, and you were paid a little bit too much money. You forgot about the Darrens, didn't you, Mazza?
You memory
hold them.
No, I just love a great Greg Cameron name pull. You know, they, they always come at the perfect, most opportune times.
Hey man, the Darrens were. I mean, if we're talking about disappointing Darrens, first Darren from I Dream of Jeannie, definitely. Darren Bragg, Darren Lewis, really coming in the clutch there, kind of right behind. But so I think what the song's really about is it's about the Beatles at this point. We're going through all of these managerial negotiations after their longtime manager Brian Epstein dies. And he dies in 1967, and they're trying to figure out, well, who is going to manage the Beatles? And that's one of the things that leads to the Beatles breakup. Is the guy that Paul wants is his father-in-law and brother-in-law. So I think the other three are just like, wait a minute. And then the guy that John Lennon brings in is a guy by the name of Alan Klein. Rolling Stones fans will know the name Alan Klein. Alan Klein later managed the Rolling Stones to a point that the Rolling Stones had to flee the States and flee Britain because their tax bills were fudged by Alan Klein and Associates, thus bringing the classic album Exile on Main Street, which they made in a mansion in the south of France. Another great album that I recommend to folks who love good classic rock. My sister-in-law and I had one of the first kind of interaction fights that we had was Beatles versus the Stones. And I can ride the line. I'm a Beatles lifer through and through, but if you ask me to choose between Abbey Road and Exile on Main Street, it's a lot closer than somebody with my Beatles affectations would think. So, but for me, sort of all of this talk about money and management and negotiation and kind of the idea of not being properly compensated for the work that you do in kind of a weird roundabout way is a lot of the feeling going on in Red Sox Nation right now. That there's a lot of people who, if you watch the first game of the Brewer series, you heard a lot of people chanting "Sell the team." And after 25 years of stewards of the franchise, that is certainly not something that John Henry and Tom Werner have ever heard. And I think there's sort of a weird parallel, too, of kind of this mentality that they've had in the last few years, and then also the death of Larry Lucchino, who was so competitive and fiery and had the best interests of the franchise at heart, especially when it came to free agents, that once he was gone, I think that fire left with him. And so I think that, using a song about a manager who had who had the Beatles' best interests at heart and was able to properly compensate them for the work that they had done, really kind of makes me think of kind of the loss of Larry Lucchino with the Red Sox, and that maybe just a little bit that that the product on the field isn't quite as well managed as you would hope.
Wow, that's deep stuff, man. I'm not sure that I'm quite ready to follow that up, but I'm gonna try.
You can.
All right. So I was originally actually thinking of things, basically looking at songs, taking a lot of what you're talking about, how someone took something that was really good and ruined it in a sense, and is still expecting me to come back and still expecting me to have a level of commitment to it. And so one that came to mind was Rihanna's "Take a Bow."
Yeah.
But then the more I thought about it, it's just like, but in that she's pushing away. She's like, "Nah, I'm done with this.
Mm-hmm.
I can't quit the Red Sox. I can't.
I can't either."
So the hard pivot here is, I Hate Everything About You by 3 Days Grace.
Oh my God.
I hate everything about you. Why do I love you?
Yeah, it's Oh, I'm so glad you spun this in a new metal, like, forgive the term, butt rock direction. Cause like it's a good song and it's like invented. Oh, well done. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your sort of, if you have anything else to add on that. But that's because
I think
there is a little bit of like hatred there as a Red Sox fan of just like, oh, this sucks. Why am I putting
yeah,
myself through this 162 times a year?
and I think that, the real crux of this song is like the toxicity of the relationship. So it still has like some of that element that my original choice was really getting at, but then it has the element of, as horrible as this is, I can't give you up, so and there's even a bit of there's anger that's involved in there. It's anger not only externally, like towards the external forces, but there's also internal, like, what is wrong with me? Why why can't I I know this is bad for me. I
Totally.
know that I'm not seeing the investment that I need to see, and yet here I am, and I mean,
Yeah.
it's really Fenway Park to a T. I mean, people are still filling the stadium. They're filling the stadium and paying John Henry while yelling at John Henry to sell the team. If that isn't the textbook definition of a toxic relationship,
It's pretty high up
and they're going to keep coming back.
It is.
And that's the thing. That's the thing that John Henry has figured out. The classic abuser has figured out just how much he can abuse the abusee without them reaching that breaking point.
Yeah. And like,
not now, this is not to trivialize actual abuse. Now,
totally.
I just want that known. I'm not,
totally.
And perhaps that's a little bit, that language is trivializing a bit, but that's not my intent.
No, I didn't take it that way, certainly, and I feel like our listeners won't either. But you bring this up, and this was something I definitely wanted to plug and push to your listeners who aren't necessarily folks who kind of find this content. But I don't know if you know June Lee and any of his content at all. He was at ESPN, and he's been in a bunch of different places, and he just did a phenomenal piece. Video piece. It's like 16 minutes long, so it's a little.
Yes,
it's a little
I did
long,
see that. Yes,
about how basically, like, the basic economic crux of his argument. He's whip smart, and he's so good at presenting this that, like, when I watched it first, I was just like, he's the perfect reporter with the subject, and like can do it so clearly and cogently. He does a whole piece about how, economically speaking, the Red Sox not winning is more beneficial to John Henry than winning is. Say this again. To John Henry, winning does not matter. The money still falls in his pocket.
right. And
I
have to. Sorry, go ahead. Continue.
No. I was just going to say that, like, the biggest first-hand example that I've ever seen. I went to see a concert. I went to see Jimmy Eat World the first time in 2023. They were playing at the MGM right next door to Fenway Park. And I'm sitting in my seats, and there's a fella in a Los Angeles Dodgers jersey and hat, and we were talking music for a while, and then I kind of had to ask him. I was like, all right, are you here for the games at Fenway, this weekend? And the 23 team, if you remember, the 23 team stunk to high heaven at that point. This is late August in 2023. and the guy was like, oh my God, yeah, I bought tickets pretty inexpensively. Like, we're making a weekend out of it. We've never seen Fenway. We've done this. And like the point here is I'm not against people coming to Fenway and seeing the ballpark, and you should. Like I did the same kind of tourism a couple years earlier, going to Wrigley and seeing the Red Sox play at Wrigley. Like these are baseball cathedrals you should see. But like then watching the game that next night and like hearing how like Dodger fans are drowning out Red Sox fans, it's like, okay. It's like the only team color that John Henry sees is green. And like I think that's what the June Lee video really drives home, is that the only real color that he cares about that's on the field is green. And it's the money in his pocket.
No, and I agree. And honestly, I found that video pretty refreshing because it honestly kind of reinforced, in a way, a theory that I've had, which is basically the same premise, but it's that when that ownership group, which is not the exact same ownership group now that it was, you mentioned Lucchino as a major, part of that, but when that ownership group took over, owning the Red Sox was basically their biggest thing. Like that's what this group
was. It was.
Now the Red Sox are a line item. They're part of a portfolio. And I think that the Red Sox ownership has figured out the happy medium. They've figured out that line. They can invest X amount and have a product that people will still come see, and they'll get the money that it was ultimately what they care about. Now they're businessmen. They're, that's whatever business you're in, you're looking to make money.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a line, and they're just like, we'll invest this much because we know that will get us this much. And we don't have to invest more to get this level of cash.
Totally.
And basically, if we have a team that's at this level, and that team happens to be like 2013, they win. Oh, that's great. That's terrific. Yeah, that's awesome. If they don't, the money's still here.
Yeah.
It's not a new concept. Someone years ago did a story on how the Pittsburgh Pirates were more financially successful as a losing ball club than as a winning one. And I don't think that Pittsburgh was doing that intentionally.
No,
but
no, they were not.
It was the economic reality of it. So it's not a new, I don't think that I was breaking any new ground with what I was thinking, but to have it reinforced with someone who did much more of the legwork than me, just like, the hamster, on the wheel in my head. It was nice to get some affirmation there. All right, so let's move on to our next one, because we spent a fair amount of time on the Red Sox, and we could spend a lot more. We could talk for a while just on how they alienated Rafael Devers to get a new third baseman in, and then let that third baseman go over a dispute over a no trade clause. But that's a whole different thing. So anyway, we'll move on to our next team and musical selection.
You know what? It's time for us to get happy. It's time for us to be happy about a team in town.
Okay.
And I'm going to do the Celtics next, because I feel like that could at least help us keep moving. Because I don't know how much we're going to be able to really, truly say. So the Celtics, as I had alluded to earlier, I had to kind of get into my 2000s hip hop bag here. And I want to kind of talk about the process that I'd gone into. And so kind of my first thought was the new T.I. single. T.I. is an Atlanta rapper who was really big when I was in college in the early to late aughts. And he released a new single a couple weeks ago called "Let 'Em Know," and it's like, then my first thought was like, oh yeah, that new Ti tune, like it's a return to form. It's I'm back, and I am dunking on you, and that's kind of what the Celtics have done to a lot of teams. But then also, I kept starting to like think about it and really kind of think about kind of the Celtics team, and they've got Tatum back, and Jaylen Brown he's been awesome. Jaylen Brown, in addition to like acting and being like the coolest guy in the NBA, just cool. Like I interviewed once at the Republican, I interviewed Satch Sanders once, and his vibe is very Satch Sanders of just cool and like crisp and like in a like just a beautiful immaculate suit and just like any room that the guy walks in, he knows, oh, I'm the coolest person here. Got it. And that's Jaylen Brown to me this year, especially. He's like, this is my team. I'm running this. Don't worry about me. And Jaylen Brown has been the engine that has really powered the Celtics. And the song that I had thought of was a song by the rapper Nelly, and the song is called "Heart of a Champion." And the thing I brought up before about the sample in that song, the sample in "Heart of a Champion" is John Tesh's "Round Ball Rock," which is the old and now current NBA on NBC theme. And like when I think about the Celtics this year, I think about Jaylen Brown, and that Jaylen Brown has basically willed this team to not fail. This team will not fail because Jaylen Brown is hell-bent on this team not failing. And I think what I love about this song, like I had re-listened to it a couple of times, and like the intro into it, it sounds like Nelly is trying to like push a teammate to lift a little harder, like lift a little heavier, and keep going past that fatigue point. And I keep thinking about that's Jaylen Brown on this team. Nehemiah Sketa should not be as good as he is. He's a very talented basketball player, but he shouldn't be as good as he is. Hugo Gonzalez was drafted like 28th. He shouldn't be as good as he is, and he's contributing on this team. And I think that's a big part to Jaylen Brown. Like as Jaylen Brown goes, so goes the Celtics. And I think Tatum coming back, like easing him back in and playing him sparingly, has been interesting and has been a lot of fun. But for me, like I keep coming back to what is making this Celtics team go, and it's Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown having that heart of a champion, and then NBC getting the NBA back at the same point, being able to hear this sample every night when the Celtics are on NBC, it was just a perfect fit for me.
All right. Well, I've already said that, the Celtics are now when the Celtics win, I'm happy. I root for the Boston teams. So, there's no ill will or anything like that. It's just something that I just, right around the time that that Larry Bird retired, I was just like, nah, I guess I'm kind of done with professional basketball. I remember, when they won the championship in KG, anything is possible. I got home from work, turned it on just to see, are they going to win tonight? And they did. And I was just like, oh, that's good for them. And then turned it off. And that was that. So the song that I came up with, this is more like the Celtics talking to me.
Okay.
And it's Bonnie Raitt's "I Can't Make You Love Me." Because that's just it, It's just like there's absolutely nothing wrong with the Celtics. I just, it's just not there.
Chris, I love that song. Bit of a downer. I just want to preface this. But like the fact that it's a 10 out of 10. It's a 10 out of 10 knowing you in like having the discussion earlier about the Celtics that Bonnie rates I Can't Make You Love Me about the Celtics with you. It's perfect. To quote James Carville in Old School, that was perfect. We have no response.
All right. So who are we on to next?
Okay. We are going to go. I think saving two of our favorites for last is good. I'm going to save, I think, our joint favorite for last. I'm going to save the New England Patriots for last.
Okay.
I'm going to go to the Boston Bruins. And I'm going to go with the Dropkick Murphys, The Boys Are Back. Because, let me tell you, July 1, they do all the signings and they do everything this year. And I thought that Don Sweeney had created a team that was oops all fourth liners. That's what I thought.
Right.
I thought it was Crunchberry's oops all fourth liners. And somehow, pretty similarly to the Celtics, I think, David Pastrnak is not going to make this team fail. He and Charlie McAvoy are hell-bent on this team going as far as they can and pushing them as far as they can. Very similarly to Dropkick Murphys bass player and frontman Ken Casey. I am going to push these guys as hard and as fast and as far as I can. And I think the Murphys and the Bruins they just work so well together hand in hand of like that, like the Dropkick Murphys ethos is very like lunch pail, for the working guy. They just released an interesting hardcore split with a band called Haywire that is very politically motivated and awesome and loud and mean. I didn't think Ken had that gear anymore. It's great. But the thing that I love about The Boys Are Back, going into like the chorus, it's the boys are back, the boys are back, the boys are back, and they're looking for trouble. And this Bruins team, I don't know that they're afraid of anybody. And like I haven't seen them live this year at the Garden at all. But they play like a brand of hockey that it's fast, they skate hard. They've got some pretty good goal scorers. I didn't have Victor Arvidsson scoring this many goals on my bingo card. I thought it was going to be a nice little piece that maybe they could ship off in March to a cup contender. He's been one of their most important guys. Casey Middlestad has played some good, responsible hockey on that same line. That line of Zaka, Middlestad, and Arvidsson just came out of nowhere. And they've been responsible, fast, just really good. And they're three guys that you can depend on in overtimes and in crunch times. But then at the same point, there's a word in that title of that song, boys. And the Bruins just this afternoon signed Boston College prospect and number 7 overall draft pick James Higgins to an entry-level contract. And boy, do they need him. They need him on that line with Morgan Geekie and Elias Lindholm. That line just needs that line needs a rocket booster strapped to its keister just to get them going. Geekie's one of the best goal scorers in the league, but I think he's just been playing a little flat, and he's just sort of at a point where he's just a little flat and a little slower, and they need some youth infusion, and I think they're going to get it in the next couple of years. So I think the boys are back by the Dropkick Murphys. The Bruins are back, and they are looking for trouble going into playoff time.
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines. Just a couple of points. I mean, Geeky has been, and I'm sorry to be doing this level of rhyming, but he's been streaky. Geeky has been streaky.
Yes.
And so, some kind of course, we're having this conversation right after, a hat trick, but but again, he hadn't scored in 8 games or something like that before
It's
it.
been a while.
So illustrating the point. But yeah, so that could be something that works for him. I also think that you can't overlook, to your point with the boys are back, the bounce back that we've seen from Jeremy Swayman this year.
He's been awesome.
And of course he's not getting the level of credit I think that he normally would, because everybody's like, well, yeah, you expect the high paid goalie to perform. So, and he didn't last year after getting paid. So I think that's something else that can't be overlooked. But just more in general, I went with song by the Counting Crows, Accidentally in Love, because I had no expectations for this team whatsoever. I thought that this was going to be a team that, was basically like what the Boston Red Sox have been this year. Just absolutely a scoring prevention team, and that goes both ways. They weren't gonna score.
Yeah.
And
but they weren't going to score against you either.
Right. And the Red Sox have definitely taken run prevention to heart with the bats. But we're going positive here. So yeah, I had no expectations for this team, and just, they've had certainly their share of games where it's just like, wow, you found a way to lose that one. But these are games that I didn't think that that they were going to be in anyway, or that they'd be at this place in the standings either. So I'm just enjoying the ride with this team. And yes, that comes from having very low expectations for them.
Sure.
And perhaps there's a bit of a double standard here, because the Jacobs have not been known for, great investment in their product either. So I'll own a bit of hypocrisy here, but yeah, I think that this team has the kind of grit and heart that really resonates with New England. You mentioned the lunch pail thing, and we've seen that with players and teams throughout the ages, with the regardless of what Boston or New England sports team we're talking about, or individual players, the Julian Edelmans of the world, and the Sean Thorntons, and these guys who who have that grit to them, and were part of big things. So I don't know how far this is gonna go for the Bruins, but I'm enjoying the ride.
Totally. It's very interesting. A year ago, when the Bruins made their deadline day trades, and they got both Fraser Minton and Marat Hustadinov, I did not think that either one of those guys were going to be as truly important to the 25-26 Bruins as they have been. And they've been great contributors. The weird thing, the other song that I kind of thought of was, I forget who the singer is, and I would have looked it up had I gone to that point, but it was "The Future's So Bright I Gotta Wear Shades," which was potentially written about nuclear war, which may have also been on the mind in the last several days. But also, the Bruins are in a good place with youth for the first time since probably 2007, 2008, when half of those guys were drafted the day of my high school graduation party. I'll have you know, when they drafted Kessel and Lucic and Marchand and those guys, that they've built a thing, but they've built a thing a generation later of that feels really sustainable, not to use a term that John Henry really loves, but they've built a thing that seems sustainable and seems like something that they can keep building on. I don't begrudge how Sweeney built the team at the beginning of the year. I feel bad for a guy like Mikey Asamont, who has played so hard and so well throughout much of the year, and then he's kind of the guy on the outside at this point. But the brand of hockey that they play, like they're going to be a tough out for Carolina or Tampa or Buffalo, one of these teams that they're going to have to play in the first round. Like if they play Buffalo, they could beat a young team like Buffalo just because they have this experience and they have guys who have like, oh, I've been here before. I've seen this. Whereas the Buffalo Sabres guys are like, oh my God, what is this?
It's also Buffalo.
What is this? Also Buffalo, who haven't made the playoffs in 14 years. Again, I was fresh out of college the last time they had gotten into the playoffs. But like, what I love about what this team is, like, there doesn't seem to be a guy who's being a diva on this team, who is trying to like just get his and stat pat. Yeah, I wouldn't have faulted Pasternak doing that at the beginning of the year. That like, I'm gonna get mine and that's it. But he and McAvoy, like they have been such good leaders and they've built a thing and they've kept a culture going. And the one guy we haven't talked about with the Bruins is Marco Sturm. Marco Sturm, when it comes to managing personalities and managing that locker room, has done a wonderful job. He's done a wonderful job. Like it's, I thought going in that his system was going to be super boring and like neutral zone trappy and like sleepy. Oh no,
old school
Lou
New
Lamoriello.
Jersey Devils.
Yeah, but it's like he's just sort of one of those coaches. Like I think why they brought him in is that they knew they were going to go young at some point, and he did a really good job with the young Kings prospects as the coach of the Ontario Reign a couple of years ago. And he's a guy they know. Like, I think that, like, I've been so pleasantly surprised with the Bruins, kind of in a similar way to the final team we'll talk about, that they brought in a coach who figured it out early, and just like figured out how to get the most out of all of these guys on this roster. Like it's a really impressive job. I haven't heard much of people talking about Sturm for the Jack Adams Award, which is Coach of the Year in the NHL, for folks who don't know. But man, he should really get some votes, especially in a league that is just dumping coaches days before the playoffs, with both Cassidy getting dumped and Patrick Waugh getting dumped on Long Island. That's very interesting to sort of see the Bruins were one of their. It's really nice to see that one of the painstaking qualities that the Bruins have had in their patience really pay off. Yeah.
Something to mull over.
Yeah, they've been patient and it works. It's weird.
Well, all right. So we're down to our last. We are down to the Patriots. And who do you have, or what do you have for this Patriots team? I gotta say, this is one that I struggled with a bit.
This was hard for me too, a little bit. Speaking of patience and waiting, the song that I went with was "The Waiting" by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
That was on my list. I didn't pick that one, but it was on my list. Yes.
Okay, great. So, musically speaking, I love Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. If you want to get into rock and roll music, good American rock and roll music, start with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, they'll take anybody. They'll let you in. That door is open. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, they'll take anybody. One of my prized vinyl albums in my collection is a live 3 vinyl set of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers playing in, I want to say it's somewhere in Florida. It might be a hometown show in Tallahassee or Gainesville. And some of the stage banter is very much just like, cool, you're here to see us. Awesome. You're one of us now. And one of the songs that's on it is "The Waiting." And "The Waiting" has that chorus of "The waiting is the hardest part." And I think after this season, that was kind of a storybook season for the Patriots, despite how incredibly not fun the ending to the season was, that I think kind of waiting for the next season has sort of sucked. Like it's been such a long off season. It felt like, despite the fact that we had the second shortest off season of any team in the league. And I think sort of how free agency went. I like how free agency went. You and I have kind of talked about this. I really like the Romeo Doubs acquisition. I think he can grow into a lot of the things that Diggs had done in this offense. Like he's the there's so much potential there. And I think as a Patriots fan, it sort of sucks to wait for that potential to happen after talking about it for so many months. But like also as a Patriots fan, you're waiting for other things. You're waiting for the Christian Gonzalez extension to finally be put to paper and inked and put away. You're waiting for the draft in a couple of weeks that I am going to rely on you specifically for news and updates while we're in multiple time zones at this point. But I think the thing is that I think that wait isn't going to be so long, which is good for Patriots fans, but also like I think sort of that waiting and that anticipation for what's next for this team is a little bit excruciating.
You know, I ended up going a bit more positive with this. Now, yours isn't necessarily.
What did you think that was negative?
But there's a sadness to it. You know, the waiting is hard, and you know, there's hope that's in there too. But
totally.
Me, I guess I will say that mine is, and granted, this is celebrating, you know, having not won anything. So in a way, it's, you know, it's illustrating a bit that we are becoming more and more removed from the quote unquote dynasty era. But thinking about those down years of having, you know, losing Tom Brady, going through the COVID season with Cam Newton, going through the Mac Jones of it all, the fall of Bill Belichick, the lost season of Gerard Mayo, and coming out of all of that and having the season that we had and the promising outlook for the franchise going forward, I chose "I'm Still Standing" by Elton John.
Great tune.
And I'm just going to leave it at that. That's really, you know, I mean, I think that I pretty much summed it up pretty,
totally.
You know, well, I summed it up in a very summy-uppy kind of way.
No. Again, to quote James Carville in Old School, that was perfect. We have no response. But I think what's great about that too, and I don't know that you thought about this, but I can give the musical perspective on it.
I can guarantee you I didn't think about this from a musical perspective.
Wonderful. I'm Still Standing is a fairly late career single from Elton John. And I think that's sort of right around, it's not right around the time, but it's sort of certainly preceding a big peak when you get to 1994 with The Lion King. Again, I'm not doing this to placate your Disney folks, but I'm Still Standing is very much the Elton John, like, knowing what we know now, of like it's very much a statement of, hey guys, I'm still here. Like I'm still a part of this, not even knowing that like Lion King is even a thing that's on the horizon with he and Tim Rice. But I think also too with I'm Still Standing, like there's that positivity there of, wait a minute, yeah, we got our teeth kicked in the Super Bowl, but we're still here. Like I think they had a very interesting offseason, and I think this is probably the exact right way for us to pivot into football. But like I liked a lot of what they did in the offseason. Like I talked about Dobbs. I love the Kevin Byard signing. That safety room needed an adult. And they needed an adult who's been there before, who's been to the puppet show and seen the strengths, who's seen it all and done it all and has Vrabel experience. None of it was like sexy at all, but it was like they built something that was interesting, and like it built on the culture that they'd already built.
Yeah,
I don't know, you and I haven't talked about this in this venue about the Patriots offseason.
No, I would generally agree. I would say that it's been a solid off season so far. But I like to, I always like to point out that the off season isn't over. We've got the draft, there's that June 1st deadline that everybody is watching, as well. So, that will at least put that part of the conversation to bed, and we'll have a better idea of what the team is actually looking like at that point. I do think that the AJ Brown has become the Larry Fitzgerald. For years we pined for Larry Fitzgerald, and every year I was just like, oh, this might be the year. That's kind of what it feels like with AJ Brown here, but that's neither here nor there. So we are an hour in here. This was a great discussion. I'm really glad that we did this exercise, because I think that I think that we came up with some really interesting picks. So and honestly, we're an hour in here, and somebody yelled at me the last time that we had a super long episode. It was just like 2 hours. Like, who are you, Snyder, making a movie? Like, but so I think that like this is going to be perfect, where we can actually break this into 2 episodes, and when we get into our the NFL draft talk, I'll already have next week's episode all lined up. So I say we just roll in from this week into next week at this point. So if like I said, if anybody has their own takes on the music thing, I'd love to hear them. I'll put some reminders out there on social media too, so that people can comment or send a message, so that we can I'll share with Greg too some of the things that other people come up with if they so choose. So because this was a fun exercise, a little bit different twist on the typical sports discussion.
Sure. And if you want to like mention stuff to me on socials, I'm hoping Chris will put them in the show notes or mention me on certain places. Feel free. Let me know that my opinions sucked or they were good, or you want to talk Beatles stuff, or you want to talk, if you want to talk about that really cool Nelly sample that samples John Tesh, go right ahead. I'm all for it. I'm usually at Greg_Cameron. I don't know why I did that, but at Greg_Cameron on most social media. You can find me. I'm willing to have a discussion. If you want to talk about the second side of Abbey Road, especially, I'm all in.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me on this episode of the Maz's Musings podcast. And thank you to Greg for helping me out with this. Of course, like I said, the second part of this episode, which will be our Patriots mock drafts, is going to take place next week. We recorded that this week, but next Friday will be that part of the episode. If you have your own songs that you feel exude the emotions that you feel about these sports teams, or if you aren't a Boston sports fan but you want to get in on the action with the sports teams that you root for, hey, I'd love to hear it. So you can reach out at mazasmusings.wordpress.com. That's the website. And while you're there, you can find our email address, which is mazasmusings@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter, X, at Mazza's Musings Pod. We're on TikTok at Mazza's Musings Podcast. We have a YouTube page, so go and subscribe there. And we also have a Blue Sky if you happen to use that platform. Now, of course, you can also share with our community, which is the Musin Place, and that's on Facebook. And of course, from the website or from our Facebook page, you can find how to join that community and be part of a bigger conversation with other listeners and other supporters of the podcast. Of course, I've mentioned the website a couple of times. While you're there, you can also find past episodes. You can find more about me in this podcast, and you can learn about how to sign up for our newsletter, which will come in your inbox once a week and let you know about what's happening with the podcast. And of course, people sometimes ask, Chris, how can I help support the podcast? And really the biggest way to do that is to let people know, to help us grow our listenership. And the best way to do that is by word of mouth. But you can also leave a rating or review on your favorite podcatcher. And when you do that, it helps make us more discoverable. It bumps us up in those algorithms that put us out in front of more people. And if you wanted to bump up your support even just a little bit more, you could buy us a blue milk. And that's a obligation-free way to help us out with some of the small monetary costs that go into putting this podcast together. And whether you are buying us blue milk or you are listening for the first time, I appreciate all the support. And I hope you have a great weekend and a great week. For the Mazza's Musings podcast is brought to you by Hi Dad Soup. Check them out at Mickey and Minutes on Instagram.